Welcome to Living the Dream podcast. I'm Beto Duran. You're like, wait a minute, Beto, what are you doing? I unsubscribed from your podcast, and now you're starting to put out content. You're messing me up. Thanks as always for those of you that are sticking by. My name is Beto Duran. If you're listening for the first time, I am the host of Living the Dream podcast. And if you're watching it on YouTube, yeah, there is a YouTube version available also. Just type in my name, Beto Duran. So what have I been doing during this pandemic? As you can see, the Beto Vision studios are still rocking in the garage. The car's right there. The door's back there. I have a couple of shirts. But just like everybody else in this pandemic, we're just trying to find a way to survive. And if you've been with me for a while, if you listen to the podcast over the last 5 years, you know that I keep saying over and over that nobody makes money on the podcast. You got to be Joe Rogan or those big dogs. I do it because I love doing it, but it's also, hey, when the return on investment, where is it? So during this pandemic, we're just trying to find a way to survive and make some money. I've done the baseball one with Ricky Romero, the Let's Go Ricky Rowe. Took a break from that one as the guys were just going back to the season. Every Thursday, though, if you still subscribe, I do the Diaz boxing show with Roberto Diaz and trainer Joel Diaz, Roberto's matchmaker at Golden Boy. And we just have some drinks, and it's like listening to your tios in the backyard talking about boxing. That was done to kill time during the pandemic. Next thing you know, it's a show every Thursday. And thanks for those of you who listen to it. Even though you're not a boxing fan, you can hear it, and you're hearing cool stories. But I haven't done the core of why I started this podcast, the Living the Dream podcast, where I talk with friends about their challenges, their journeys of where they got to. And everybody's dream is different. Everybody's road is different. I love hearing successful people who just guided themselves to the top of their profession, whatever that may be. And I'm very inquisitive. I like hearing, and how did you get there? You know, a lot of whys, like that little kid that's annoying at the parties, like, why? Well, that's me now in my 40s. But I've gotten away from that because, during this pandemic, we're trying to survive. And also, I've always said I love doing the podcast in person with people. And there's just something that's lost when you're doing it via Skype or via Zoom or on a phone call or video conferencing. That interaction that you have with somebody is lost. But I've noticed, though, that now that everybody has gotten used to Zooming and figuring out the technology because everybody does it, I think we can do the podcast a little bit more often. So last week, the LA Times did a 50th anniversary of the Chicano Moratorium in East LA, and they did a great job with it. I can't recommend it enough to go and check out the LA Times version. And our good friend Gustavo Arellano wrote a piece about Ruben Salazar. Ruben Salazar was from El Paso, a writer for the LA Times who was killed at the Silver Dollar Bar. And there's some theories as to, was he targeted? Was it an accident? But he had covered the events of that day and was inside the bar, and tear gas hit him upside the head, and he died. So the LA Times was doing a great feature about that. And I was like, Gustavo, let's talk. So got Gustavo Arellano, who is the new California columnist for the LA Times, and we did a podcast about it, about the LA Times coverage and what he did, because the LA Times didn't do their own podcast about it. So I was like, there's an opportunity for me here. Let's just do it. We're home. Let's do it. And the success of that podcast, the numbers that came back, I'm like, whoa. Considering I haven't done a podcast for Living the Dream in, I don't even know how long. And people started messaging me, hey, you got to do this again. Hey, you got to do more. Hey, you got to do this. And I said, you know what? Yeah, no. And I'm being realistic. It's not worth my time. If you notice, I've been golfing a lot. I'd rather go play golf. And I'm starting to work boxing again. I'm starting to work Channel 2 again. So I'm starting paying attention. And then the kids are back in school. We're trying to, we're all homeschool teachers now, right? But I will admit, I missed it. There was a rush doing the podcast. Like, man, even the editing afterwards, the promoting on Instagram and Twitter, and getting the messages from people. It's like, I got to do this. So I went back and wrote down my notes. As you can see, I got my yellow pad. I got my yellow pad here. I got my notes, and I was like, what am I going to do here? So I got to figure this out. So I said, I'm going to do it where it's worth my time, worth the guest time, and I'm going to make sure that it's your time, because if you're watching it, you want to make sure that you're enjoying it. Like everybody now during this pandemic has decided to start a podcast, right? That's what everybody was doing the first couple weeks because it's a great way to keep you occupied. And I've always said, great, if you want to start it, cool. But it's a grind to do it consistently over and over and over. So I wrote down the notes. I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to all my friends that are professionals in the broadcast business, and not even necessarily just broadcast, but it's just successful people that can hopefully inspire you to get through this pandemic where you're feeling down about yourself. But heck, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do next in my career, because a lot of the jobs that I was doing a year ago, they're gone now. They're not coming back. So what am I trying to do in this broadcast business? Am I going to stay in it? How do I evolve? So I'm going to bring on guests that are really thoughtful, inspirational, and also on the cusp of what's next, what's new. So I've got a list of people where I'm going to do it, and I'm going to release the new podcast on Tuesdays. I'm going to record Mondays and release on Tuesdays. And that's what's up. That's what I'm going to be doing moving forward with the Living the Dream podcast. It's the evolution that we all have to do. When the podcast started 5 years ago, it was like, oh, let me get my friends and just go. Now it's, no, keep it moving, keep going, because I got inspired with it. And if you know anything about me, once I get inspired, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. That's why if you look at my Instagram at Beto Vision, I've been golfing a lot because I got into it. I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to do it. So I'm becoming a golf influencer. I've decided. That's another a different avenue that's going on. But without further ado, today's guest is somebody who I've admired for a while. Never met him, but he sent me a message after the Gustavo podcast. He's like, man, it was really good. I've always wanted to be on your podcast. And I'm thinking, why would you want to be on my podcast? This is Professor Roberto. Hold on, I gotta say it right. I gotta say it right. Let me get it right. Dr. Roberto Andrade Franco from Texas. I think we're just gonna say all Texas. He is joining us today. He is a PhD from Southern Methodist University, SMU. Is that right?
Right. That's correct.
And you are now a freelance writer. And I've read your stuff for 4 or 5 years, something like that. I think the first time I read you was about Chavez's impact on Latinos in Deadspin. You've written for Deadspin, Undefeated, ESPN, all over Texas. You've done a lot of stuff. You've done stuff for the LA Times. And you told me, I want to be on your podcast. I'm like, for real? You're like, yeah, when I started writing, I want to be. I'm like, wait a minute. You want to be on mine? I want to know you. Like, we've never met. It's only just via writing. This is the first time I know what you look like, by the way, because you never post any pictures on Twitter. Your last tweet yesterday was about the biggest mazapan in the world. That was cool. Roberto Andrade Franco, thank you very much for coming on to the show today. First of all, why did you want to be on this podcast?
Well, I mean, thank you for having me. I mean, when I first started writing, or when I first started to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I just kind of figured that I had to sort of teach myself these things about writing and just learning from people who I had no access to except through podcasts like yours. And I just listened to a whole bunch of podcasts. One of them was yours. One of the ones that I most consistently listened to was yours. And I always walked away inspired. And you used to always say that you would only do the podcast in person. And that kind of became one of like my goals, that one day I would be there, right, sharing a beer and having a podcast talking about who we were.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing. And shout out to Craft Beer Kings, my good friend Mo and Mike Salam. They do give us beer, but we're recording this early in the morning. So in the morning, I got cafecito. I don't have my Hydro Flask because I remember you sent me a picture, a sticker of FC Juarez. So I don't have my Hydro Flask. It's somewhere in the car. But I do have the tequila, so we'll do the cheers for you later after the show. But yeah, it's obviously flattered that you would say something like that you want to be on. And that's the reason I do the podcast, where it's, if I can inspire one person to do something better for themselves, it's worth it. That's why I say the return on investment. We're not making money off of this, but if we're helping out a fellow Latino in this crazy game, I'm all for it, man. So thank you very much for saying that. And I'll send you some beers. I don't know if I can ship to Texas, but we'll figure out a way to get you some beer. What do they drink in Texas? Like Shinerbach, right? Like that's that Texas beer?
Yeah, I mean, I have all types of beer, but yeah, man.
Yeah,
Definitely do
we'll
something.
figure something out. So, what do you do right now? What is your profession? What is your ambition?
Well, I'm a freelance writer as of right now. I graduated in May, and like everything else, it's trying to find a transition, trying to find what comes next, and trying to survive. I feel like the first few weeks, maybe even a month, you're just, at least personally, it was more like a panic, like, oh my God, everything's shut down. What's going to happen? And then you kind of find a way, find your lane, you start to figure out what there is to do. So at that point, yeah, we're just here. I have a 3-year-old daughter that we look after, so it's always busy.
How did you end up being a writer? I mean, have you always been one, or
No,
because I kid you not, I always do a lot of research on people, and I'm good at finding things. Bro, you don't exist. You're like a ghost out there. The only thing we can find on the internet about you is just your writings. There's a website, Boxing in History,
right.
and
Yeah, that's it.
Boxing in History,
Well,
and that's it. And then there's no background on you, no high school, no nothing, man. I don't know. What's going on here.
well, I worked construction for 10 years right after high school. And I had no idea that I wanted to write. I had no idea what I wanted to do, which is why I didn't go to college. I just graduated. I went to probably like a month or two after I graduated. I graduated from El Paso. My parents are from Juarez. We moved to Phoenix, my cousin and I, because we heard that there was a lot of construction work out there. So long as you could take working under the sun. So that's what we did, and that's what I did for about 10 years. I worked as an electrician. I worked as my last job was actually highway construction. So we would go in after mostly drunk drivers would crash the guardrails, and we'd replace them. And I got to about 28 years old, realized that wasn't going to be a good future. Just because if you're ever out on a job site, you see the old men there are just, and I felt I was young enough to actually make a change. So I just enrolled in El Paso Community College. I initially wanted to be a history teacher, really because the summers you didn't have to work, right? And I figured I'd like coach football or something. I transferred to UTEP, University of Texas at El Paso, after a year, and one of the professors after one class told me that I should enroll in the PhD program. And I mean, I don't have any background in this. We're not like academics or anything. So I said, yeah. I thought it was like some extra credit shit. So I go home.
No.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant. Right? So I was like,
wait, hold on. Before we get there, your professor sees this young man, or actually a man now, and says, "Hey, this kid has some talent, some ability. I'm going to recommend he gets to the PhD program," and you're thinking it's extra credit.
Yeah, I just say, yeah, that sounds
extra
good.
credit. You had no
credit.
You knew nothing about what a PhD meant.
I had no idea what a PhD. Man, my parents, they're from Juarez. My dad dropped out I don't know if dropped out. He just didn't go to school anymore after the fifth or sixth grade. My mom graduated the Mexican equivalent of high school, and then she worked at a hotel cleaning rooms. We're working class people, and I had one cousin who actually went to UTEP, but he lasted like a semester or two, and then he just started working. So yeah, when he tell me the PhD program that I should look into it or I should do that, I'm like, all right, yeah, I'll do that, not knowing what it was until I get home. I start researching this stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is like the path to becoming a professor. You know what I mean? And yeah, that was really the first time that I thought about a PhD program.
That's great. So you were let's go back a little bit because this is fascinating. Because you sound like me. I thought I was going to be a history teacher and coach baseball and be off for the summers and just travel, whatever, right. Like just chill. You graduate high school and you didn't even think about college at all, right? Where you just... It wasn't what you do, right? El Paso is like a working class city where either you go to the JC or you just start working, right?
Right. Well, my dad was in the Army. Part of the thing that kind of helped give us guidance or provide for us was that my dad was in the army and then he got out and so we were able to travel a bit. And after high school, it was just it's just one of those things that it's just assumed that you're going to go to college but at least in my experience, no one. That's just like theoretical. Like no one really. I don't know if support system's the right word, but it's
no
just,
examples for you.
there's no examples, right? There's no examples. So me deciding to not go to college, I actually attended the El Paso Community College orientation, and it was like a 2 or 3 day orientation. After the first day, I said, "Man, I'm not fucking doing this." Partly because I didn't know what I was gonna do. Right? It felt like every student there kind of had their goals, they had it planned out, and so yeah, that's when I left to Phoenix.
So you did construction for 10 years?
Right.
Like real work, and Phoenix is 120 in the summer.
Real work out there, working as an electrician, standing on top of the roof, drilling holes so we could run power up to the ACs. Yeah. Moved back to El Paso for a bit, and I was doing, I mean, pretty much all construction work is outdoors.
But that's good money, though, right? It can be.
It can be, yeah. I mean, at that point, the goal was to go into the union, right? But I mean, it wasn't. I just never could get in. I mean, it's not as easy as just showing up and being like, "Let me in."
Yeah, it's respect to all those guys that wake up every single day, the blue collar, that they have their lunch pail, they're going to it. I know I can't because I'm gonna mess up my manicure, so there's just no way. Like I mean, you gotta know who you are. I know that's not me.
Then in Phoenix, it was so hot, it would go up to like 118 that you have to wake up. Basically, the workday is from like 4 a.m. to about noon, just so you don't essentially pass out from the heat. So yeah, I remember waking up, setting my alarm at around 3 o'clock, and in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock, the DJ on the radio would say it's 98 degrees right now, and you're like, fuck, this is just gonna get worse and worse. So yeah.
What made you say, that's it, I'm done with it? Like what, the light bulb? You talk about those old bitter guys at the construction site where, it's like all of a sudden they realize their life has passed them by. And that's what we talk about on the podcast, and you've heard it. We get to say we're living our dream. As much as the struggle as it is, as much as the grind, as much as BS that we have to deal with in this crazy profession, we still wake up every day like, all right, cool, let's go. We're going to figure this out, what we're going to do. I'm pretty sure you were probably at the end of it where you're, damn, it's 3 a.m, I got to go do this today, I got to do that today at the construction site, right?
Right.
When did the epiphany hit you that I'm done, F this, I'm just done?
Well, I think for the first few years it was cool, right? It was kind of like, hey, I could stay in shape. It's better than working indoors in some cubicle. And then there's always older construction workers that I guess they kind of saw in a way that I had I don't know if wasting my time is right, but it was always like they would say you're a U.S. citizen, you speak Spanish, and English. You could do a lot of different things, and I think to a certain extent they maybe saw like a son in me, or at least something similar. And I don't know, for a while it just started to make sense. You would get laid off often just because people wouldn't be buying houses usually during the winter time when the holiday seasons would come. So everybody would get laid off a couple of weeks. It was just more, I mean, it's physically taxing work. And it just got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm young enough to actually make a switch. And if I don't do it now, then I felt like I would be stuck there for a long time. And also, I also felt like all the sacrifices that my parents made, that I was just kind of throwing them away to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
That I could have easily worked construction if I was a high school dropout, if I was whatever, right? But all the advantages that they had sacrificed to give, I felt like I was wasting them.
That's that line about the only thing worse. The worst thing to see is wasted talent, and you had opportunities, and I have some friends who are DACA, and they are trying to figure out what they're going to do with their jobs right now because of what happened, because they weren't born in the United States. And these are broadcasters, people in the business. It's like, okay, what's going on here? So I respect you for changing things up and going after it and changing it. You're 28 years old and you enroll in community college. What was that like?
Man, the first like week was just horrifying. I was nervous, right? I was like, man, I want to run away almost. Uh, Cause I was like, man, I'm gonna be the oldest kid in here, and
Yeah.
maybe it's been 10 years and I don't even know how to properly do the work anymore. Uh, but I mean, after the first week, I kind of found my groove, and I realized that I could make it really. That I could, if I could focus on what I had to do, I would be all right. And also, all those years of working construction and just kind of bouncing around kind of gave me perspective. You know what I mean? It was like me reading a chapter or two for some assignment. It wasn't anything compared to digging a ditch outside when it's
Mm.
118, right? So I've often thought what would have happened had I just gone to college straight after high school. And I mean, I think that I would have eventually just flunked out or just stopped going, and I don't know what would have happened.
When you enrolled in community college, did you know what you wanted to do?
No, besides history, and then
Hold on, hold on, hold on. So you're 28 years old. You stop working. You
right.
you move back home. You don't know where the money's gonna come from.
Well, actually, I was living back home at that point.
Okay, but okay, so
Okay.
you stop working. You're gonna go to school full time. You're
Right.
28. Where and I've had the same thing when I was 27, 28. You know, the tias are like, oh, mijo, look at your cousin. He's doing this and that, and I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I'm working at the radio station midnight to 5 a.m. Trying to figure out what I can do. And it's like you look around, and that's why you got to keep the blinders on of like just keep the focus on yourself. But did you kind of like think like, what am I doing? Like, I know you're saying, okay, I'm disciplined, I'm focused, but at the same time, like, wait, college is 4 years. I'm gonna be in my 30s
Yeah.
by the time I graduate. Like, what am I doing? Like, and then you had no
Yeah.
idea what you want to
I mean,
do.
part of it was I saved a little bit of money, and then because of our economic or my economic circumstances, I qualified for the Pell Grant. Uh,
Okay.
so that helped. That I mean without that it wouldn't have been possible. Uh, and then I just knew that I liked history. As dumb as that sounds,
No, that makes
that
sense.
that was one thing that I could focus on. And then once I got there, I just kind of fell into it, right? I qualified for several other scholarships, and I just figured that, like I said, I would become a teacher, and that would be that, and at least I'd be working indoors and having the summers off.
You be a teacher, so you went to be a teacher.
I went to be a teacher because my then girlfriend, now wife, was a teacher,
Okay.
right? So that was like the first time I saw I guess, positive example, for lack of a better phrase, of oh man, we don't have to like get home all sweated up and grimy and all tired. Not that it isn't difficult work, but it's a
Yeah.
different type of work. Uh, and really through her, she kind of set an example, and then even bouncing off of ideas off of her. Even, I mean, I asked her some really dumb questions about college, like what do they mean when they mean a credit hour, things like, I mean, just basic stuff that I had no idea about.
The stuff you're not taught.
Right, the stuff you're not taught, the stuff that I'm sure there was counselors at school that could have taught me, but it was just
But why are you
just
gonna go see a
things.
counselor? We ain't doing that. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
come
It's
on.
my lunch hour.
Yeah, exactly. There's no need for that. So, what happened? How did you end up being a sports writer?
Well, so I graduate from UTEP, and then I'm gonna come over to so I apply for the PhD, right? I apply at UTEP and they accept me, but they're basically not gonna pay me anything. I have to go into debt to study, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I mean, I knew enough to know not to go into debt, or at least try to not go into debt. And this is kind of I don't know if it's funny or a weird story, but I was watching 30 for 30, uh, Pony Excess, the one of SMU,
Uh huh.
and I was just like, man, I should look into their program. And I looked into it, and I applied, and
No, it doesn't
yeah,
work like this. It's
I
not. It's
applied.
not supposed to work like this. You're not supposed to choose a PhD program based off an ESPN show.
Right. Well, I mean, I applied at three spots. So
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
you
one
went
of
to
the
that one because of the 30 for 30.
yeah, I wouldn't have applied had I not been watching.
Eric Dickerson got you to go to SMU in
Eric
Dallas.
Dickerson. SMU without the Corvette that he got paid.
Yeah.
I just
This,
went there.
this is why now this is why I told you in the beginning of the show I've been inspired to do the podcast because you meet so many different characters and people, and everybody's dream is different, everybody's path is different. When you speak, like I speak to different high schools, and I always tell them, whatever you do, just make sure that you're following your dream that's yours, not your mom, not your dad's, not your friends, because you're going to be the one that has to do that work every single day. So if you want to be a principal, if you want to be an assistant principal, if you want to be a counselor, a teacher, whatever it is you want to do, make sure you love what you do. I have a lot of friends, I say it all the time, that are rich and son of a bitch. They hate what they do, but they have their flossing on Instagram of everything they have, and they know who they are. I text with them all the time. I ain't speaking out of turn here. They know what's up. But you now are locked in, inspired. You're applying to SMU. You're going to a PhD program. But did your mom not say, Mijo, wait, didn't you just graduate? Why do you have to do 4 more years of college?
Well, I definitely had to explain to him what a PhD program was, and I had to tell him that.
Well, you didn't even know. You didn't even know.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, what I knew, I had to tell him, and I actually had a. So I move out here, and my cousin comes to visit one day. He works for installing DirecTV, and he asked me, he's like, "So what are you doing out here?" And I tell him, "Well, I'm here to be a doctor, but not a real doctor, right? Because I don't want them to think that I'm actually in the emergency room." And finally, I don't know. I had to tell him a couple of times. So finally, he's like, "So you're not going to be a doctor? So are you studying to be a nurse or something?" Right. So I mean, it was just trying to figure out what I was doing, and yeah, that's what it was. Just trying to explain to people something that I barely know about.
Ay, raza, they just don't. And so you get a PhD in what?
In history. So I get here in Dallas in 2014, and probably like a month into the studies, I just realized I don't want to do this shit. Right? It just wasn't for me. Academia, it was just very different. SMU's in a very rich part of the state. I think Jerry Jones lives around that area. SMU's a beautiful campus, but it's mostly white campus. So I immediately felt out of place, really, and being in academia is a whole different thing that I was used to. I thought I was going to flunk out the first month, really. Graduate school is very difficult, and I was used to working hard, but I would get A's, right? And I was putting the same effort and working just as hard, if not harder, I felt than usual, and I was getting C's. Yeah. And in order to not get kicked out of the program, you basically have to have B's.
Yeah.
So I thought.
Go ahead.
So yeah, man, there's a part of me I thought I was going to get kicked out. I was going to flunk out, and I would have to go back to El Paso, which I thought it was kind of absurd to, they throw me this going away party for something that they have no idea what I'm doing, and then I show back up, a month and a half after, just failing. But thankfully, I was able to pull through, and I kind of figured out what I was going to do.
It's an intimidating thing to get into. Look, college is intimidating for anybody because,
right.
Let alone the graduate programs. I don't know anything about it. I have really smart friends. That's my thing. I surround myself with smart friends. So you go from El Paso, where it's like 90% Mexicans, Latinos, to an affluent area in Dallas, right. And not just SMU. You go into the graduate program, where you're probably the only brown person there. And in the United States, of the people who have PhDs, 4% are Latino. So you are the elite of the elite when it comes to the academic world. How hard was it? How intimidating was it? And also, look, you're pelon, bro. Like, they don't look like you. They're looking at you like, that's the electrician construction dude, right? Like, right. How much of that did you face?
Well, first of all, I have to say there was one other Mexican guy there.
Okay, one.
Joel Zapata, as Mexican as last.
Dude.
Right. And actually, he went to UTEP also. I didn't know him. But when I started researching SMU, I recognized his name because he has a very distinctive name. And that was part of the reason why I went there. So, I mean, the first few days were cool. Like I said, you're just surrounded by these these huge fountains and multi-million-dollar homes. There's like Maseratis in the parking lot from the students, and then after a while, it just and the same for Dallas, really. It's just these tall, beautiful, shiny buildings that I wasn't used to, and but after a while, it just you just realize that you miss home, really. That you kind of at least me personally didn't fit in there. It felt like had we lived in the Mexican part of town, it would have been a much easier transition. But we lived close to the SMU, so it was we stuck out, right?
Yeah.
Especially once you get older, I think you kind of realized who you are. It maybe had I been a teenager or gone to my all entire school there, but yeah, it was just different than I was used to.
And it's a 4-year program, right?
It's wow, I mean, I think the average PhD takes like 8 years or something
Oh!
like that. Yeah,
See, once again, I don't have one. I just have smart friends, so respect to them even more.
right.
So you got a PhD and you're in history, and you just said, "Forget it. I'm not going to be a professor." But you got to stick it out. You graduate. It just happened a few months ago.
In May,
In
right.
May.
Well, I mean, this is kind of like my background that for part of the fellowship, I was getting a stipend, which was $20,000 a year. Uh, and up to that point, I had never made that much fucking money in my life. Uh, so I was like, man, I can't stick this out. What am I going to return back to El Paso? I guess I could have returned back to being a teacher, but I had applied to be a teacher in El Paso before we moved to Dallas, and I didn't get hired. I went on several job interviews. I guess I could have applied somewhere else, but I don't know. I just felt like it was important to me to actually finish this and to to stick it out, right? And to have to learn something. I mean, that was really where my writing came from, just from reading so much and learning about this and putting things into historical context.
Man, it's respect to you for doing that. When did it become the I'm going to be a sports writer? Because you're writing this a few years ago, but
Right.
how?
Uh,
Where?
well, this is part of me thinking I was going to flunk out. I had a professor pull me aside after class, and I mean, they're pretty blunt with me, saying that my writing was not good, or at least not up to the standard of a graduate student. So, after a few days of cursing them out in my own head, I decided. I was like, well, I mean, obviously they're right. They wouldn't just be. I should look into this, right? So I started writing about boxing for some website that didn't pay me. I mean, I wasn't expecting to get paid, but just as a way of practicing my writing. Slowly, they let me write. I felt like the first time I got something published was like in 2016, and I don't know, man. It was crazy to see my name on the internet, even if only like 1,000 people saw it
Yeah.
in this small website. It was a crazy experience, and up to that point, I felt like that was it. Like I was just gonna write for free, a couple of things here and there, and then I don't know, I'd figure something out. And I kept writing, and I kept noticing that I mean, to be honest, that some of the stuff that I was writing was a lot better than some of the other stuff that people were publishing.
That's how I
So
found
I
you.
so I just kept writing, and I started I pitched to Deadspin,
Yeah.
that first article. That was the first major article that I had written, and
Shut
uh,
up.
yeah, that was the first major one. And oh man, I was afraid, to be honest. I had written the pitch, and I was like, man, should I send it? Should I not? Right? Because it's like, man, they're gonna tell me no. They're gonna tell me to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You have all of these negative thoughts, and I pressed it. It was a Friday. I still remember it perfectly. I pressed send to Tim Marchman. He was the editor back then. And then I was nervous, so I went to Walmart to go pick up some groceries. And I get an email while I'm shopping, and I see that he's interested. And at that point, I was like I felt chills, right? I had never expected it to be published, and eventually it got published. And yeah, I just kept pitching. And I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it gets easier. I
Yeah.
think one of the major things is just the self doubt, right? The self doubt that, yeah, I shouldn't even pitch Deadspin, or I don't belong, or not I don't belong, but the LA Times is never gonna
Yeah.
read one of my pitches, right? And I think if anything, you just ignoring that, right? I mean, some days are easier than others, but just ignoring that and knowing that yeah, you should pitch it. What's the worst that they could tell
They're
you
gonna
is
say
no.
no, and
Yeah,
and
you're already at zero,
yeah.
right? The
What's
only thing that could happen is it's gonna go up.
Yeah, you're gonna like I said, you're gonna get rejected for every job. It's no problem. I have the letters of I got rejected for 22 TV jobs. It's cool. That's great.
Yeah,
I didn't need to go to Yuma or Eureka or Bend, Oregon or all them other cities that told me no. That's cool. But you keep on going and you get going and then now I'm on CBS on Sundays. Go figure. 20 years later, but you go and figure it out. So Deadspin was that story. What was the story about?
it was right before the Chavez versus Canelo fight,
Yep.
right? And so I pitched them this story about, since I was writing about this at this point, a part of the reason I stayed in the PhD program was because they let me write about boxing, Mexican boxing. Uh, so I said, this is why this fight is important, right? Not because just Mexicans are into this, but this has a history in it. This is who Chavez is and who De La Hoya was, their connection to this fight, and what that says about the Mexican experience, I guess, and maybe to a broader extent the Latino experience about assimilation, about machismo,
Yep.
about what it means to fight a certain type of way, right? About Chavez Jr., all the hopes that were placed into him, and that's what I wrote, and
Yeah.
they ran it. I was surprised. It was close to like 8,000 words, and
It
I
was
had
long.
never.
It was long
Yeah,
because it took me a couple of days to read it. You know, here's why how I came across it. So that week, Chavez and Canelo are fighting in Las Vegas. I'm working for Golden Boy, and I was assigned to cover Chavez. My job that week was wherever Chavez went for interviews and press conferences, I was the Chavez guy. Jessica Rosales, my partner, was the Canelo person. So anytime Canelo would get done with something, she'd interview him. I had Chavez. So we're in the room in Las Vegas. We get there on Monday night, and I'm looking around. Obviously, I do a lot of reading and researching, and I come across your story. I think it came out like on a Wednesday or something like that. I'm not too sure. It came out the middle of the week. And Deadspin was it 2016, I think, was a site that I would go to, but not all the time because they would just it was either hit and miss with me, and I wasn't.
right.
It used to be the site you go to every day. Then it became, anyways, that was a different story. So I came across your story, and I'm reading this, and every single night we had a special show, and I remember referencing your story. I'm like, wait a minute. There's a story about Chavez and Canelo on Deadspin, which is mostly Anglo website.
Right.
I see a Latino by name that I've never seen before, and I take pride in myself of knowing any Latino that's coming through that's a writer. I'm gonna be like, let me give them some shine. Who are these people? Let's go, because especially when you're writing about boxing, it's not much exposure. I was like, where did this guy come from, and how the hell does he write so well? And who gave him 10,000 words, the ability to
Right.
write this stuff? So I was like real curious about you, and I wanted to follow up on you. And once again, I researched you. You didn't exist. I'm like,
Right.
okay, so Roberto Andrade Franco, I'm like, maybe it's a pen name. And I kid you not, I thought it might have been one of Deadspin's white writers using a Latino name for it.
Right.
Because nobody's going to give you an opportunity to write that many words. So it was great. And then that week, I interviewed Chavez after the weigh-in. He was on the stage, and by that time, his face was all shrunken up. But I remember reading that all week long. I'm like, this is really, really good. I want to read more of this guy. Who is he? And then you disappear. Now I know why, because you're doing a freaking PhD program. You don't have the time to do all this other stuff that I wanted, because I love reading the history of anything. Back to me wanting to be a history teacher. And you started writing these longer pieces. I came across your website, and on it, so Boxing and History, if you go and check it out, there's a lot of features that you've done on the Mexican fighters, the growing up on the border you did with El Paso and Juarez. That's where your forte has really come in through. That's where your strength is at. Why have you gone that way?
Well, it's like I said at first. I was just fine writing about boxing my whole life. Had I been able to, at one point I felt that. But I don't know, man. I mean, to be honest with you, I think sometimes I just got ambitious. I just felt like I could write more, and then also writing about boxing. It's I mean, there's very little money unless you're writing for the major spots, and I mean, a place like Deadspin wasn't going to hire me just so I could write about the two or three super fights that they have per year. So I just started realizing what I guess different perspective, different unique experience, life experience that I had, and unfortunately, Juarez and El Paso became nationally known. Where for a long time it felt like nobody really knew them. The one thing that they were known for, especially Juarez, was Juan Gabriel,
Oh
and then
man,
uh, then
Juanga,
as
man, you bring Juanga and everybody's like, ah, like everybody gets all fired.
uh, and then obviously with all the drug wars that's happening, and then last year's massacre in El Paso, it just it became like this this place that was, I don't know if known or at least elicited curiosity. And I just felt like a lot of the people that write about the border, they're not from there, so I think they miss a lot of. They go there because of the violent stories, right? Which is
Yeah.
natural, but I felt that I could provide an actual voice of what it was like growing up there.
And last year there was a piece that you did for the LA Times about a high school football game
Right.
that was canceled, and they ended up playing it, and it was right after that massacre in El Paso.
Yeah, yeah. So about a month after the massacre in El Paso. So my wife and I, since my wife's a teacher and I could pretty much work from anywhere, we go back to El Paso during the summer each year. And so we were there. We were there during the massacre. We were getting cupcakes for my sister's birthday, and that's when all of a sudden you just got these text messages, right? These text messages of from the city, from people asking you if you're all right or where you're at, and the radio all of a sudden just went to like nonstop news, and a month after, some Eastwood, which is about 2 or 3 Eastwood High School, 2 or 3 miles from that Walmart. They played against Plano, which is where the killer, the alleged killer, the guy, went to high school. So I pitched that story. That this was once again one of those things that you're kind of doubting yourself. You're like, man, does should I pitch it to a little spot or should I pitch it to the height of the top of the top, the LA Times? And I pitched it, and almost like 10, 15 minutes later, they were told that they were interested.
Yeah, it was 23 were killed in El Paso. You mentioned the shooter was from Plano, Texas, and the high schools played well, a team from El Paso, a team from Plano, and the LA Times did a great job for it. Go and research on the LA Times website. Angel Rodriguez, the sports editor at that time, approved it, and he also sent a video crew. So you're not an LA Times employee. LA Times has a big sports staff. I remember I was doing
Right.
the LA Times Arrive Early, Leave Late podcast at the time, and he told me about this story. I'm like, wow, that's cool. Like that you're like, but Angel, you're taking on a freelancer for this. He said there's nobody better to do that than somebody who's involved with those communities. And they sent a video. I remember reading about it. I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't finish reading it. It was really hard to read that story because these are teenage kids who just saw people that they knew were
Right.
killed, and
And
yeah,
also the week before or leading up to that game, one of their former teammates had drowned in a Memorial Day
that's right.
accident.
That's right.
Right. So it was a whole lot of emotions going on. Just yeah, it was a very emotional game.
Yeah, the website is Boxing History. You can go and check out all of Dr. Franco's writings there. You also written about being a Chicano, a kid growing up on the U.S. side when trying to identify with your Mexican cousins that are in Mexico. It's just, we all go through that. What is Selena's dad? We're not American enough for the Americans. We're not Mexican enough for the Mexicans. Like, dude, you're a Texan. You really do know that world.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in El Paso and having the majority, maybe not the majority, but a good part of my family in Juarez, it was like that. We would stay in El Paso from Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends we would go back and hang out with our family back in Juarez. So yeah, it was this continual back and forth that it was during growing up.
It's and then you get into this world, the
Right.
writing world, and you look around and you're like, wait a minute, how do you tell a story of a community when the people who are writing it don't represent their communities? I mean, It's
Right, right.
it's a different.
And it's one of these things, like I was saying, that you're trying to find examples of what it means or what you should do to write. And so some of these self-help books, I guess, or how to be a better writer book, were like, one of the examples was like, spend 3 months in isolation somewhere in the cabin, something like that, right? And that's when I realized, I was like, man, I mean, this is a very, very closed off profession to a certain extent, right? If you have that
Time.
type of time that you could just leave the whole world behind for 3 months to
You
work
got a
on your novel,
cabin.
right? Yeah, yeah, Kevin. So yeah, but thankfully I found a good community of writers. Everybody's been, I'd say 90% of the people that I've reached out to, such as yourself, such as Gustavo Arellano, Ileana Limon Romero,
Yeah.
who you had on one of your earlier workshops. Angel Rodriguez also. I mean, there's a whole bunch that I've reached out to, and they've been more than supportive,
Yeah.
right? So
It's
that's helped tremendously.
the best is like so Fidel Martinez, who runs the LA Times social media
Right.
account,
Do that.
who's from the Rio Grande Valley, but he's a hipster, so he's an LA hipster. He doesn't work. But anytime he tweets something about you, I always write back and I'll tweet. The LA Times should just hire him because the LA Times had a big thing about how they need to hire more Latino writers. I'm like, well, you got a dude who's been published all over the country, ESPN, Deadspin. He has a PhD and he's bilingual and he understands the communities. So what's the problem? And I know I piss off people at the LA Times. So don't reply to those tweets. I'm doing it just to poke because I'm in my 40s now. I know my role. I know where I'm at in this business. So I can poke people. So that's what I do. So if you need me to poke somebody, let me know. I'm here for you people. I'm the official poker in charge right now. So we'll take care of people. So if you need a job somewhere, let me know. I'll just tweet those people, hire him. So once again, don't reply to those tweets when I say LA Times needs to hire you because you're still new in this business. Let me do that for you. Sorry, but I'm working for you. I'm working for you. But okay, so now you have your PhD. You're trying to figure out where you're going in this business. You're freelancing, which is scary because you're 1099 and you got to do all the business stuff and the taxes will come get you. 'Cause I know I got to do my taxes today. But did you feel like you made the right choice?
Yeah, because I'm not dreading going to work, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not realizing that it's 3 in the morning in Phoenix and it's already 98 degrees and it's only going to get 20 degrees hotter. I mean, it's not easy. It's there's a lot of days where I do wonder, like, I mean, not just me. I think overall the pandemic, what it's done to people and the revenue streams that they once had. So yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty, but no, I don't regret it. I feel like I feel like I've come out on top. I mean, I obviously not finished yet, but I feel like from where I started to where I am now, it's been good.
Yeah, you're living the dream, right?
It's the dream.
You're on the podcast. Your dissertation for your PhD was about?
It was about Mexican boxing, about what it means to these communities, right? What people like me that I grew up around boxing, as I'm sure a lot of Mexican and Mexican Americans did. What it means to watch Chavez fight in the 1980s and 1990s, or what De La Hoya meant, or even now what Canelo meant, or what Andy Ruiz meant for a few months there, and maybe still. So yeah, that's what I wrote about. I wrote about putting it in historical context of, of immigration to the United States, right? How Mexican immigration just skyrockets after the revolution, and slowly they start to build these communities, and many of these communities still, this is where boxing lives still, right? Here in Dallas is the Oak Cliff area, which is a Mexican community. That's where boxing happens.
You wrote about Oak Cliff, how that's a neighborhood that is being gentrified, how
Right.
it's getting cleaned up, but then you have that old school man who's running the gym, who is the former mechanic who just knows what's going on with everybody. And he had this line about if he gets pushed out, he's like, I'm just going to open up another gym down the street because these kids need that. And you you wrote about how an 8-year-old is running, dreading the running, but then the old men are like, I ran in back in my day. And it's as Manny Robles, the boxing trainer, says, it's el deporte de los pobres. It's a poor man's sport. But the discipline these kids have when you're going back and forth with it, it's like, I've never fought. I've never hit anybody. I don't plan on it unless I was at Sharky's in Hermosa Beach, but everybody's done that. The thing about that is I love this sport and I love watching it. And that's why I'll never talk bad about any fighter who gets in the ring. He might be 0-12, and that old line of he's a TJ taxi cab driver. But to just get in there, to have the balls to even get in the ring with a beast where you know what's going on. And then these guys are literally fighting for survival. And
Right.
I work with Doug Fisher and Steve Kim. They told me that these guys are the backbone of boxing. And the thing about boxing is there's so many characters in it. There's a book coming your way. I know there's got to be a book somewhere for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to turn this dissertation into a book.
Really?
Which is going to be, I mean, hopefully by 2022 it'll be out. But yeah, it's just, I mean, you spend enough time around these gyms, these little gyms, not these like franchise gyms where people just go there. Basically, they use boxing as an exercise rather than for the sport. And you realize that these gyms are kind of like community centers, right? The mom and dad hang out there. The little cousin hangs out there. Every once in a while, they'll have cookouts there. These are spots. These are gyms that are there to keep people out of trouble. I mean, and a lot of boxing owners, gym owners will say that this is why we're here, to keep people out of trouble, and it's to build a community, as I said.
It's to give these kids hope, and it's an interesting sport. I've covered all the sports, but it's nothing like boxing where the attitude and the approach of like there is no safety net. You have to survive. Like you're getting hit on purpose. Like one of my old bosses told me, like boxers are different. They get hit on purpose and they like it. But they're also the nicest people too. They're for you. So you're gonna have a book coming out. We're gonna get you hired at the LA Times. You've been on the podcast. What else is next? What do you want to do?
Man, what do I want to do? I want to keep writing. Basically, I want to keep making a living out of this, even if I'm not a millionaire. I just want to keep writing.
You could go into academic and be a professor, right?
Yeah, I guess I could, but I mean, I don't really want to.
But you don't want to. You don't want to, right?
Yeah, I don't want to. I mean,
there you go.
Yeah. I just don't want to do that.
The reason is because that goes back to what everybody else is like. It's living the dream. Everybody's dream is different. A lot of people who were in that PhD program where you're like, I'm going to be an academic, and they're book smart, but they're not street smart. They haven't lived that life. Where maybe I can see you like in 20 years, have a full on gray Fu Manchu going, and maybe with a nice cigar, but a fedora. I can see you on a campus doing that in 20 years when you're in your 50s, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, listen.
Come on.
I think I would like to teach, but it has to be under a certain spot. Like, I think back in El Paso, where I could use my experience to hopefully inspire people. I think that's where I would do it. Here in SMU, it's just. I mean, I don't fit in. It seems like if I went to go teach at Harvard, let's say. It's just a completely different vibe, and also, I mean, I feel like my value, I guess, to sound arrogant even, isn't there. It's in teaching at El Paso Community College or even high school in El Paso or even UTEP.
Yeah, it's not an arrogance. It's about knowing who you are. Like my brother is a principal at LA Unified, and I know for sure he could have gone to different schools and different things, but he's in the cut because he said because these kids remind me of me when I came over from Mexico when I was 10 years old. Like, they're the same exact kids. I have more value here. There's a reason I go and visit high schools where they don't have a journalism program. They have two smart kids that have a paper. Because I can go and tell them, hey, my mom has opinion. Like, they know the pandu. My experiences are not going to be the same with the kids at the prestigious elite schools. It's just not going to be the same. You want to have it where you can relate, where you can inspire that one kid. I don't ever want to see you at Yale. Like, why would you? Why would you go to Yale? Right?
Right. Yeah. I have nothing to offer.
If you're from Texas and you go to Yale for what? What's up, Fidel Martinez? But yeah, you're right. You're going to be that later on after you've written many books. El Profe Franco, not Professor Franco, El Profe Franco. Right? That's what you got to say. El Profe Andrade. You're going to be like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting, right? You're going to be at the small community college, and you're going to find that one kid who's like, okay, that's the one.
Yeah, that's it. Maybe I'll start a boxing gym there.
No doubt. So Roberto Andrade Franco is his name. Now I know what the R stands for because I just knew you. Like we don't know people's names anymore. We just know their social media handle. So you're
Right.
R underscore. That's who you are. All right. Before we get going, real quick, you tell some great stories on your Twitter. You're an excellent follow because you tell stories about your family. What the hell were you talking about mazapanes for the other day? What got you going about the 16,000-pound mazapan?
Well, my mother and father-in-law are visiting, and whenever they visit, they're from El Paso. Whenever they visit, they always bring something from back there. Even though now you can buy mazapanes everywhere, but it used to be you could only buy them basically in Mexico. So they bring mazapanes, and I have mazapanes while they're here. And I was just interested in the history of the mazapanes. You know, it's one of those things that it's just natural curiosity. I saw that it started in 1950, and then I mean I kind of know what's happening in Mexico in the 1950s. This is kind of like the boom of the Mexican miracle, as they call it. This is before 1968 and the massacre that kind of changes the entire political system. So I just imagine the first time that mazapanes were introduced, this was like the height of Mexican society, for not for all of them obviously, but for broadly speaking. So I just started researching mazapanes. I started researching that, and I thought some of this stuff was interesting, so I just I shared it on Twitter, and I ended up with the biggest mazapan in the world. Was 18,000 pounds.
Yeah, 18,000. Wow.
18,000 pounds.
Yeah, because I love mazapanes. I will destroy them all the time, and it's just like one of those weird. The reason I like it is because when we were little, like there's 7 kids in our family, so my sisters don't like them. So what would happen? The mazapanes will still be left over, so I'll like it. Like I like everything that everybody else doesn't like because that means it would be more for me. So it's pretty like my sisters didn't like vanilla ice cream. I love vanilla ice cream because that means I had the whole tub for me, right? I was just greedy little kid because when you're 7, you got to find a way to find what's for you. So mazapanes, I love them, and I saw your tweets about it. I'm like, there you go. De La Rosa. Why is it named that?
I guess at this point there were just all types of people were making mazapanes, or at least that type of stuff, and one of the people that were making them would package them with a little rose, with a little La Rosa. So when people would show up to ask for a mazapan, they'd ask for a mazapan de la Rosa, and that just became the candy factory's name, or the candy the whole thing. Right now they make all types of Mexican candies.
Yeah, and then they used to be almonds.
They used to make them with almonds. The original recipe was with almonds, and that was too expensive. Obviously, peanuts are a lot cheaper, so he started making them with peanuts. And here's this is from my own personal experience. You should freeze your mazapanes. Freeze them, and they almost like melt in your mouth. They're almost like a creamier texture.
See, the whole goal is always when you open it up. If those you don't know what a mazapan is, just Google it. It's a little circle, and the goal is as soon as you open it, not to have it crack. If you can do that, you got skills, bro. You got skills. Look, Felipe Esparza, he had that shirt made up. A play off of the Mazapanes logo from De La Rosa. So Felipe Esparza actually has a brand new special today on Netflix in English and Spanish. Go and check him out. So that's what we do, man. 10 million mazapanes are made a day using 500 tons of peanuts. That's what you tweeted. That's what I care about. See, anybody can tweet about what the Cowboys are doing or fantasy or anything else like that. No. I want mazapan detail. That's what you get from Professor Franco because there's kind of different stuff out there. So really go appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I know you want to talk about your Cowboys, and you get 10 seconds. Go.
The Cowboys are winning the Super Bowl.
You are such a Texan right there. Oh, because you are a real Texan. You watch Cowboys old practices, right?
No, well, not the old practices, the scrimmage.
Yeah.
The scrimmage that they showed.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, actually, one of the great things that happened in El Paso while I was growing up was that in 1996, the Cowboys ended up going to play in a scrimmage in the Sun Bowl, which was this crazy event because the Cowboys are Super Bowl champions at this point, and so that was like one of the great moments of my teenage years in El Paso, just seeing these Cowboys, even if they just scrimmaged, right? And this is the Cowboys of the '90s, so all the good and bad that happens with that. I think at that point.
Oh yeah.
At that point, Michael Irvin was on trial for some drugs and
the whole team was right.
Yeah. I mean, it was a good amount.
It was a good run, good run. So R Andrade Franco, R_Andrade Franco, El Profesor. We appreciate you coming on Living the Dream. We all got to get back to stuff. You're writing anything coming up soon? That's getting published.
I got a couple articles in the upcoming months for Texas Highways. One of them is on the 1 year anniversary of the El Paso shooting, and another one's on the history of lucha libre along El Paso.
History of lucha libre. That's
right.
Like, I don't watch wrestling, but anything lucha libre related, I'll read that. And I've been to El Paso a couple times on our way to Mexico. My parents are from Zacatecas. We would go through El Paso, down to Juarez, down that road. Then next thing you know, Chihuahua is there for the next 3 days. So it's like, I'm like, wow. So El Paso's cool. Sun Bowl, I would watch it every year. And I always wanted to be one of the persons, because in California they would show it at 10 a.m., the Sun Bowl. I always wanted to be one of the people that's sitting on that rock that was too cheap to pay for the game. So way up on top. I always wanted to be one of those people up there. So the John Hancock Sun Bowl was the name of it back in the day. So yeah, I know what's up with El Paso. I love my Texans. You're my favorite Texan. Fidel, like I said, he's not from Texas anymore. He's a hipster from LA, so we don't claim him anymore. And like right here, people commenting, Cowboys are winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, you guys are. Sure you are. Professor, once again, appreciate you very much. Thanks for coming on the podcast. This will be posted out there. Go check it out. And I don't care how, where, whatever we're going to do. We're going to do this again in person, and we're going to drink some beer and have mazapanes.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
For having me, Beto.
No problem. Thanks to you, man. Thanks everybody who listened to the Living the Dream podcast. We'll do it again next week. If you have any suggestions or people I can come on, bring them. Let me know. Always rate, review, subscribe, and the Living the Dream podcast. We're going to keep on rolling, keep it going. Appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye.